It is quite a relief to hear that there's indeed a science of getting rich. Because if you grew up in an environment like mine, then you are familiar with the numerous myths that we have about money, which fortunately I have proven all false. Myth number one, they will tell you that in order to get rich, you must be born in a certain family. That is a fat lie. I wasn't born into a wealthy family, but right now I am far more successful than most of my peers who were born in families that were more successful than mine when we were growing up. If you look at every billionaire, every inventor, every successful person that has ever lived, there is always a first, right? For example, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, who became a billionaire in his 20s, his parents were not billionaires. Is that enough evidence for you? Bill Gates did not inherit billions. So the evidence is there, all around you. It's a myth that you need to be born rich in order to be rich, okay? And in fact, I'm sure at least in your community, there's at least one family that was rich when you were born, and right now there are children in that family that can barely feed themselves. So it has nothing to do with where or what family you were born into. The second myth is that wealth depends on your environment. That is a myth. Dangote is there in Nigeria. Donald Trump is here in Washington, D.C. in the White House. Both are wealthy people in the places where they are. Do you get the drill? The idea that wealth depends on environment is a myth. In New York, which is so-called the financial capital of planet Earth, there are more homeless people than the total population of the northwest region of Cameroon. So, if money was about the place where you find yourself, how come there are homeless people in New York? How come the number of poor people in America is greater than the total population of Cameroon? How come that in Cameroon there are people who are multi-millionaires, there are people who are billionaires living and working in Cameroon? How come that there are people who travel out of Cameroon to look for greener pasture, but they never come back home because they are too embarrassed to come home as failures? So environment is a myth. There are certain environments that are more enabling, that is a fact, but environment itself does not have the power of causation over wealth. The third myth is that wealth depends on religious practice. That also is a lie. I don't care whether you're a Catholic or Protestant or Pentecostal or or you're a Muslim or Hindu. If you look at every religion on earth, you will find wealthy people in that religion and you will find poor people in that religion. If you come even to any church on earth, you will find wealthy people in that church and poor people in that church. Same with mosques and temples and synagogues. So, in fact, I'm not sure we can count the number of billionaires right now on earth who are atheists. So forget about that church thing. Church does not make you rich. Your spiritual practice is a domain on its own. If you are engaged in one, that is fine. But don't practice spirituality because you think that is what will make you rich. Related to religion is the fourth myth, which is cults. When we're growing up, they taught us that anybody who has money must be a Nyongo man, and so we were raised to fear the idea of getting rich. Even though, something that is very strange with poor people is they demonize rich people, but they cannot resist the money of rich people. I don't really understand how that works. So why is it that when you travel out of your local community, the idea of Nyongo suddenly disappears from your mind? Because it's a cultural myth, okay? The what we used to consider as rich people in Batu when I was growing up, apart from Pananga, whose wealth I still respect, apart from Pananga, there is no rich person in Batu by the standards of wealth that we know today. So you can imagine what environment does to you. So try and get out of that myth, and in this course we will really help you break those barriers. Now that I've mentioned Pananga, let me go to the other myth about education. This guy never had a secondary school education. He is 29 years old in his grave. He is still the wealthiest person that my village has ever known, and possibly the northwest region of Cameroon. But in that same village, there are professors, there are doctors, there are engineers, and so on. So education is also a myth. What other myth should we look at? Hard work. I used to say that if hard work made people rich, my mother would have been a billionaire, because having 10 children, waking up at 4 a.m. every day to prepare breakfast for them, we will eat and go to school. She will wash a pot and start cooking. By 10 a.m. she would have finished packing our lunch, and then that is when she's going to the farm. And then because she goes to the farm late, she will always come back late, around 7 p.m., 8 p.m. So that is how hardworking my mother was. And I know that most of you know people who work that hard, but they are not rich. So hard work itself is not the source of wealth. Hard work can be a vehicle to making you rich if you understand the science of getting rich. So those are just some of the myths that we will clear along the way, just to open up the mindset that wealth is a science. Getting rich is a science. It has nothing to do with chance or prayers or luck or genetics and so on. If you understand the science of getting rich, you will get rich with the level of certainty that you use to solve a linear equation.